Okay, hello. I think we're connected. Hopefully everything is working well. We'll be starting in less than a minute. I'm not sure what's going on. It says there are people in the chat, but the thing says 0 views. I'm not sure why there's that discrepancy. Anyway, let's start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. I'm going to continue with our tour of the realms of existence. And today I want to talk about the yakkas. A preliminary note. You'll come across various different ways of organizing the multitude of beings in samsara. Common one to see is the scheme of the 5 jatis, the 5 realms of rebirth. Also the 33 realms of existence, and there's several other ways of analyzing it. All of these schemes are rather arbitrary for a couple of reasons. One is that there are numerous individual beings that are hard to classify. There's one story in the Petawatu concerning a human wanderer who meets a magical being in the desert waste, and in the course of the story he's identified at different times as a yakka, as a dewa, and as a peta. So the boundaries are rather blurry. We can't really determine for sure in some cases where to put a being. The other problem is that there are several types of beings that don't fit into any of these schemes, just as a category. And the principal one of these are yakkas. They don't fit into either dewas or petas or any other category. They're something of their own. The word yakka can be used sometimes very loosely in the texts, and in its most general it can just mean any kind of being. There's one sutta where Moggallana refers to Sakka, the king of the gods, as a yakka, for example. But there are a definite class of beings that are specifically known as yakkas. In general, they're rough, ferocious-looking, demonic kind of beings. The closest analogy in Western folklore would be ogres. But then there are also other yakkas who become converted to the Dhamma by the Buddha or one of the Arahants, and they become protectors of the Dhammapalas. You'll often see in Thai temples, outside the gateway, there'll be statues of these ferocious-looking yakkas, and the Thai imagery often has them with big fangs coming out from their lower jaw, and rather dog-like faces. And these are yakkas that have been converted and are protectors, and they're there to scare away any other demonic beings that may seek to gain entrance. Uh, in the Jatakas, there are many stories about Yakkas, and they often follow a pattern. The Yakkas are dangerous, monstrous beings who feed on human flesh, and they either live in charnel grounds where corpses are tossed aside and devour the corpses, or they actually prey on humans. But when they prey on humans, a curious feature is that they're very law abiding. They have their own set of rules that they follow. They're all subject to King Wesawana, who is one of the four great kings. He's the king of the north, and he's himself an interesting character with several different attributes and roles within the cosmology. But as Lord of the Yakkas, he exploits their labor at times. He has them gather water for him from Lake Anotata, the magical lake in the Himavad that has this supernatural healing qualities in the water. It's highly sought after. And he has the Yakkas running back and forth with jugs of Anotata water. And they serve him like that for several months, and some of the service is so hard that some of them die in the course of the service. But if they complete their time and to his satisfaction, he will reward them by giving them a limited range in which they can hunt and kill humans. Often it's the shade of a tree. They dwell in the tree or around the tree, and any human who comes within the shade of the tree, they'll catch and devour. There are some other types of these limitations or these allowances for Yakkas. One of the curious ones is that a Yakka was given permission if somebody sneezed and nobody said long life to you, which was the equivalent of social politeness. Nowadays people would say God bless you or Gesundheit. If someone sneezes, you're supposed to say long life to you, and if no one says it, then he's allowed to eat the person. Another instance of the Yakkas being limited by rules is that they can fly through the air, but only following along fixed paths. They're not allowed to deviate from these fixed paths. So there's one story where the Yakkas are flying through the air and they can't pass over a building because the Buddha happens to be inside the building. There's another story where a group of Yakkas are living in the charnel ground, feasting on corpses, and someone puts a corpse in there on the boundary between the territories of two separate Yakkas, and they quarrel over who it belongs to. And they rescue a human king who's been imprisoned to abdicate for them, and he cuts the corpse in half with his sword. They sometimes assume human-like forms to fool people. Sometimes the female Yakkas, Yakinis, will lure travelers through wilderness places by assuming a beautiful form, and you can imagine a caravan of merchants coming across these tents in the desert with beautiful women, and there's drink and food, and the women lure them into the tents and then devour them. There's also stories about yakinis uh, seizing, capturing babies and eating them. And in a couple of stories, after they capture a baby, they develop a tenderness to it and they raise it as their own. So the Yakkas have many different kind of roles and forms. Some of the Yakkas, or a few of the Yakkas, are extremely powerful. One of these, who's rather important in the sources, is Alawaka, the Yakka, who had a confrontation with the Buddha. And there's quite a lengthy account of Alawaka's story in the commentaries. The core of the story is found in the Sutta Napata, and it's very brief. It just says that the Buddha confronted the Yakka, Alawaka, and the Yakka was unable to harm the Buddha, and he asked the Buddha. He said to the Buddha, "If I'll ask you some questions, and if you can't answer them to my satisfaction, I'll split your head in 7 pieces, or grab you by the heels and throw you over the Ganges." And the Buddha said, "I don't see any being in any realm of existence that could do that to me, but I'll answer your questions." And it turns out there was a back and forth of Dhamma questions, and it turns out that all these questions were passed down in this Yakka's family from a previous encounter with the previous Buddha. And this Siddhartha Buddha answered the questions in exactly word for word the same way. So this moved Alawaka to faith, and he actually became a stream winner. Which is an interesting detail. We have another couple of Yakkas who become stream winners. In one case, the Yakka had a very ugly, loathsome form. His body was covered with needle-like hair. But after he became a stream winner, he transformed into a Deva-like beautiful form. Because it says that a stream winner cannot exist in a loathsome body. Anyway, back to Alawaka. There's a much more elaborate story in the commentaries where Alawaka is under a tree feeding on humans with this usual proviso that he can only eat a human being who rests under the shade of his tree. And he captures a king who's out hunting. The king makes a bargain with the Yakka and says, "If you'll let me go, I'll send you a person every day to eat." So the king ends up pretty much depopulating his whole kingdom. Once he doesn't send, they run away. So there's no one left to send but his own son. And at that point, the Buddha intervenes. He appears into the story, and the encounter with the Buddha is given in much more elaborate detail. Alawaka attacks him with various magical attacks, rains of hot ash and flames and weapons and so on, and nothing hurts the Buddha. They all transform into flowers or sandalwood paste or whatever before they hit him. And in the end, the Buddha, of course, converts the Yakka, and the Yakka is tamed and becomes a stream winner. I bring this story up because one interesting facet of this story, the different versions and the different levels in the story. Alawaka is either a demonic sort of ogre living in a tree, Or when he encounters the Buddha, his dwelling is described as this 7-story palace with iron palisades and everything else, and he has a harem of yakka women inside, and is much more powerful and dangerous being. At one level, you could see this as a reflection of the fluid nature of reality in the cosmos, and the same being may exist at different levels and be perceived differently by different beings. That king was a human of a low moral character, and he perceived the yakka as a demon living in a tree, whereas the Buddha, with his divine vision of the bhavachakra, he perceived Alawaka in his higher form, or perhaps a truer form, as a very powerful deity with immense powers, a powerful nature spirit. So the story of Alawaka, the yakka, it's mentioned in a few places in lists of the great deeds of the Buddha's life. So it's one of the I think it's 7 great deeds. It's the defeat of Alawaka the yakka. So it was considered important by the tradition. Last time I spoke a bit about, speaking about the human realm, I spoke about Uttarakuru, the northern continent, and the description from the commentaries of it as a kind of primitive paradise. There's also a very odd sutta in the Digha Nikaya that talks about Uttarakuru in quite different language, as a realm ruled by yakkas who live in floating cities and oppress humans. Although the commentary says these are not the natives of Uttarakuru, but humans that are hunted in Jambudipa, that is our land. And they're used as beasts of burden by the yakkas. It says they'll ride them or hook them to carts. And the northern continent, of course, is the within the domain of Vesavana, so it's natural that yakkas would be inhabiting there. So these two accounts are quite different. But of course, an island continent is large enough that there might be different countries within the same island. So what else to say about yakkas? I think maybe I'll leave that, as an introduction to yakkas, and we'll see what I can go on with from the questions in the chat. Okay, when a yakka interferes with human life destructively or protectively, do they do so because the ability to perceive it means karma, or is every act approved by the 4 great kings? Well, it is said that these beings can't harm you if you have good morality. All these kind of demonic beings, they prey on your defilements. They're not. Every act is not approved by the 4 great kings specifically, but as I said, that they might have an allowance in general, like they can eat everyone who comes under their tree. How do beings from the realm of form eat the oja if they only have senses of seeing and hearing? Yes, that's okay. This is referring to the episode in the Aganya Sutta where the Abhasara beings descend to the earth realm and taste the nutritious foam, the oja, on the surface of the sea, and then they descend to human form, or to fleshy form on the earth. Now, this is a good question, because if they were purely Abhasara beings, they would not have the desire to eat, nor could they taste anything. So what this tells us is that they were already descended. The fact that they were in orbit around the earth would also indicate they had descended from their own realm. So they were this is at the beginning of a world cycle, and the first realms that come into existence are the higher realms. The world manifests from the higher realms down. So beings from the higher realms then descend to the lower realms, and so there's that transference of beings that originated as Abhasara beings begin their descent, and they'd already began a transition into the realm of sense impression before they tasted the oja, or they wouldn't have had the desire or the ability even to do so. An obvious question is, how do yakkas relate to Bigfoot or Yetis? Yes, many people have made that connection, that Bigfoots and Yetis may perhaps be actually yakkas. They may be the same kind of being. Since yakkas are a higher being than humans, why would stream entry cause them to die, but the same would not happen for humans? I wouldn't say yakkas are higher than humans in general. It's a rare occurrence for a yakka to attain stream entry, and they don't die. They just transform and lose their ugly, loathsome form and become deva-like. Are yakkas yakshashas? Yeah, the Sanskrit for yakka is yaksha, and there's a class of beings called rakshashas that are in the Vedic texts that are similar to yakkas. It may actually be the same thing, but just a different name. Different realms mean different mindsets or body shapes, Ajahn? Both. The bodies are different, and actually at different degrees of subtlety or coarseness as you go up and down the realms. But the minds are also different. When you get to the realm of form, that the default consciousness is equivalent to being in jhana on the earth. Are monks allowed to talk about things they have seen in this world? Asking a monk whether they've ever seen psychic powers or extra-dimensional beings in the wild. It's kind of a gray area. Monks are not allowed by Vinaya, they're not allowed to claim even truthfully to have psychic powers. So seeing beings in the wild, devas or such, would be perhaps considered a manifestation of a psychic power, although maybe not if the being had chosen to display itself. And certainly the monk could talk at second hand about things that others have told them or that they've witnessed in others. Is it possible a yakka would manifest as a mountain lion, say, to devour a man within its allowance? Or is the man truly in for the fight of his life, with what's left of it? We don't have any stories about yakkas transforming into animal shapes. they will attack in their ordinary shape. How should we make use of the knowledge of Buddhist cosmology such as Yakkas in our Dhamma practice? Is it to help create a sense of samvega so as not to be a hooked beast of burden? Yeah, that is really, I think, part of the intention of the Buddha in describing these different realms and different types of existence is to create a sense of samvega, which is awe or urgency, by seeing the horrible side of samsara. Now, someone who's not versed in the teachings, is rather ignorant, they may see the process of rebirth as something desirable, to get another life, whereas in reality it's a very dangerous and possibly terrible occurrence, that one might come back in any kind of form. If one has only a few hours to learn the Dhamma, which canonical text would you recommend for study? Usually it's recommended to start with the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses, and within the Digha Nikaya, the Satipatthana Sutta and the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, but the whole volume. It's not a huge book. It's maybe like 300 or 400 pages, and it's there's a lot of narrative in the Digha Nikaya, so it's more approachable. It's easier reading in some ways than other texts. How reliable are the parittas as protection? Say a non-monastic goes in the wilderness to meditate beneath a tree, yet his practice would be cut short by yakka. Yeah, the parittas are particularly designed for that, to protect one from demonic forces. They're given by the Buddha for that reason. So it's actually quite useful to, and it's also harmonizing to your own mind to chant parittas. Are petas able to communicate or interact with us? Some people are more sensitive to this. If so, also what makes one more sensitive to this? Yeah, the petas, probably of the different kind of beings and realms, petas or ghosts are the closest in vibrational level to the human realm, in that more people around the world have seen ghosts or petas than they have devas or anything else. It's not that uncommon for, there are ghost stories in every culture. Everybody knows stories about ghosts and having seen ghosts. And yeah, some people are more sensitive to that. I don't know what, I couldn't say what makes them more sensitive. Some karmic propensity. Petas are generally, the general run of petas are pretty weak and helpless. They're not really able to do very much. It's unlike devas or even yakkas that are able to choose to manifest themselves. I think petas more often is kind of accidental. Can you elaborate on anapanasati meditation? Yes, I can't really, can't really go into it in too much detail now. You can find many instructions on it. I've done dedicated videos on anapana. You can find them on my website, or many other teachers have given instructions. But in general, I'll give a very brief statement. In general, the idea is to fill your mind with the sensation of breathing. And the sign of the meditation is the sense of touch. So you pay attention to the sensation of the air moving across the nostrils. And the main thing is not to force the mind, but to have a relaxed, open mind, but try and fill the mind with the breath. Let the breath fill the mind rather than push the mind onto the breath. Have you ever seen someone else with psychic powers? I'll say that I have seen well, I would say the most unusual or amazing incident I ever seen was a snake doctor in Thailand healing someone from cobra bite with psychic power. I experience senses yakkas present in our human sphere. Sometimes I sense their energy in their existence from energy field, their energy field pulsing, my energy field boundary, like big strong guy body push. This happened because I practiced meditation a long time in my youth, but I have not time to do meditation nowadays, but sometimes the effect still occurs. Yeah, that's possibly a being like a yakka or a peta interacting with you. You can never be 100% sure in incidents like that. It could be an entirely internally generated feeling, or it could be a natural occurrence of some kind. But I wouldn't rule out the possibility of it being a yakka or a peta. If samsara has a purpose and that promotes a system of endless rebirth and suffering, why would there be a realm human, which is allow a way out of samsara? Well, there's no purpose. It's not a purpose. It's not like it was designed by anybody for a reason. It's just the way things are, and it's just a natural cycle. The fact that there is a way out of it is something that discovered by the Buddha, and it indicates that the whole process is kind of self-generated anyway. Could you do some compare and contrast videos with Sarvastivada Agamas and Theravada Suttas, like the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, or comparing stuff from different commentaries of various traditions? I'm not sure I really want to go into that. That would take a lot of research to do that. Other people have done some work in that way. Bhikkhu Bodhi and also Analayo have done considerable work in comparing the suttas and agamas, and you can find their stuff. I would recommend you go there if that's what you're interested in. Okay, so I think we'll make an ending of that, and we'll come back next week, and I think next week I'd like to maybe talk about another group of these kind of demonic beings, the asuras, who have some characteristics like the yakkas, but they're quite distinct. Okay.